Hello, creeps. It's me, John Kassir, the voice of the Crypt Keeper, and you're listening to Chronicles from the Crypt.
Hello there, kiddies. I'm Casualty Chris.
And this is Father Malone.
What was that laugh for? Oh, because I didn't do the voice? Okay, fine. I'll do it just for
Do
you.
it, go.
Just for you, Father Malone.
Hit him.
Hello, kiddies. It's me, the Crypt Keeper.
That's what I was looking for.
His laugh's the best part, right?
Yeah, man. We don't even need John Kassir. Yeah. You just do your thing.
Well, hey, now. Whoa. We step on enough toes on this podcast as it is. Let's not throw caution to the wind.
I don't know. We're doing okay.
Yeah, but this is Chronicles from the Crypt, the twice-a-month look at the horror anthology series known as Tales from the Crypt, that aired on HBO from 1989 to 1996.
Now, on each of our podcasts, we do 2 episodes of the television series, and along the way, we do some tangentially related tales ephemera, including movies that are at least, as I said, tangentially related to tales, and on occasion, just as we did the previous episode, we did a movie that was actually based on the brand of Tales from the Crypt. But here we go. It's season 6, everybody.
It sure is. We're kicking off season 6 with a look at 2 episodes. The first and second episode of the season, Let the Punishment Fit the Crime, and Only Skin Deep.
Overseas and underworld, it's the Crypt Keeper News Network. Good evening, creeps. In the news tonight, Wolfman bites dog. Vampires say life sucks. Mummy takes the rap after years in denial. And illiterate zombies insist they're better dead than red. This just in. And our top story tonight is a nasty little susty soundbite about an ambulance-chasing lawyer who's about to bleed the toughest case of her life. I call it, Let the Punishment Fit the Crime.
So Let the Punishment Fit the Crime aired October 31st, 1994. Very Tales from the Crypt of them. It's directed by Russell Mulcahy, written by Ron Finley. It stars Catherine O'Hara and Peter Nichol, along with Joseph Maher. And it focuses on a ambulance-chasing lawyer who gets stuck in essentially a toned-down version of Nothing But Trouble's Town.
Dude,
because that's what this reminded me of, right? Like that, you can't deny that this didn't remind you of
all
that.
I could think was this is Nothing But Trouble. When did Nothing But Trouble come out? I know you know.
I want to say Nothing But Trouble came out. So this came out in 94. I want to say we're knocking right on the door. It was 3 years after. So this came out 3 years after Nothing But Trouble.
Okay. In that case...
So this is post Nothing But Trouble.
They should have known better. Having said that, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Let's talk about the source material, shall we? This ain't Tales from the Crypt. This is Vault of Horror number 23, written by Bill Gaines and Al Feldstein, and drawn by the amazing Jack Davis. This is one of the ones, as far as an adaptation goes, where I'm totally baffled by where they went with it. If you've read the original comic, which I sent you recently, Mr. Stashu.
It's true.
You would know that the original story, Let the Punishment Fit the Crime, is about a group of children who are wandering through a town, effectively miming a funeral procession. And everywhere they go, the adults in the town are like, isn't that adorable? Which is a weird reaction, that they're actually acting like they're part of a funeral procession. And come to find out, each of the different characters has been asked different questions by the children, to the effect that they learn that kidnapping is a capital crime. So if you were to kidnap someone's child, you could face the death penalty. So these kids have figured that part out, and one of the children in the neighborhood has kidnapped one of the dolls of another girl who is part of the funeral procession, and they realize realize at the last moment that these children have killed one of their compadres, and this is the funeral procession of a child going on. It is so psychotic. As a comic book, never mind as a potentially filmed entertainment, it's kind of hard to believe. So much so that they threw that entire fucking plot line out the window when it came to the Tales from the Crypt episode. This has nothing to do with any of that. This is instead a critique of mid to early 90s lawyers and ambulance chasers sort of in general. Really weird.
Yeah, it's, my concern with the 6th season of the show, with what I remember of having watched it in the past, which is very little, admittedly very little, is at least with these first 2 episodes, and we'll see with the upcoming episodes, they have seemingly given up on the supernatural,
right?
Completely,
almost complete,
not even kind of given up, just like full stop. Yeah, this isn't Tales from the Crypt anymore. This is just kind of stories, and this is a Twilight Zone episode, 100%.
Oh yeah,
but like unabashedly so. Which, look, that's fine, but this is something we've said before. This is something we've said before this episode. This is something that we will continue to say, I guarantee it. Why are you... Well, technically, we only have 3 more times to say this. Either why are you leading or ending the season with this? Why? Why this of all things? That's a genuine question. Why? Because this is not the way you should lead a season opening. Period.
I mean, kind of at the same time, we go back to season 1, and we had what was effectively a thriller episode in The Man Who Was Deaf. I think there's a legitimate belief.
I mean, The Man Who Was Deaf it's not a supernatural episode, right?
No, not at all. Not at all.
But it elevates itself past something like this, which is just, you see where this is going from a mile away.
Honestly, did you, though? Did you figure out what was going on?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I myself did not.
I did, but I'm not trying to say I'm some sort of fucking genius. I figured it out because they kept pushing it in the direction of she's never going to be able to leave, and now she literally can't leave.
Yeah, I mean, look, ultimately, if you're sort of taking a step back in a worldview of this particular episode, there's no way she's getting away with anything. Did find myself, however, watching the episode concerned about what her fate was going to be, because it sort of slid up and down a scale of potential badness for her. This is a very weird episode. I'm not sure ultimately at the end, is she dead? Is she in purgatory? I haven't really wrapped my head around it. I think ultimately, this is kind of a worthy episode. I didn't hate this at all. I, in fact, enjoyed it quite a bit. That might be because of Catherine O'Hara. It might be because the tone of it wasn't so sort of knowingly jokey. And Peter McNichol's character kind of is, but I love Peter McNichol. Good Lord. Just one of those unsung character actors. If I ever got a chance to interview him, I would sing his praises from the mountaintop. I know people have feelings on the Bean movie, the Mr. Bean movie that came out in the 90s. He's amazing. He's the perfect straight man to Rowan Atkinson. I know people also have opinions on Ghostbusters 2. He is absolutely the best part of that movie. Best part of that movie.
Everything you're doing is wrong. We are coming of Vigo. I love him. Janusz Poha is amazing. It's a great character. He's a fantastic character actor. I haven't seen him in enough things. He's also amazing in Addams Family Values. But he's the best part of this episode. And I love that he's in this episode because, again, he's such a fun character actor who always just goes for it, to say the least.
But I think the episode actually sort of comes up to his level because it becomes more and more absurd to the point where we're dealing with a judge in a tiny chamber that is actually voluminous, where he has to climb up in order to address the judge. It just becomes more and more absurd as it goes on, which I really responded to. And I gotta say, honestly, because I had not seen this episode before I watched it for this particular podcast, that level of absurdity not only was welcome, but I actually was worried about the fate of Catherine O'Hara.
Yeah, see, I wasn't worried about her fate because she's just a terrible character. Not terribly written I'm just saying, like, she is a terrible person and she gets what she deserves.
Right, that doesn't mean she was a terrible character. I mean...
No, I'm just saying, like, her character, like, she is a scuzzy character.
Yeah, she's a despicable human being, which I think was hit a little too hard on the nose when she finally kind of gets her initial comeuppance where she has to be pilloried, which if those of you don't know out there in Radioland, pillory is when you get locked in the stocks, your hands and feet are immobilized and you're stuck there, and all of the ghosts of the people that effectively were disenfranchised by her frivolous lawsuits come to attack her. That, to me, was super clumsy. It was a downer part of the episode because don't make subtext text. Just do your thing. Like, we'll infer what we want out of it. They kind of didn't trust us to experience what that character's problem was. Other than that, like, I'm kind of on her side from beginning to end because they made the very smart choice in casting one of the most appealing actresses ever as this sort of scuzzy attorney. I don't know. I enjoyed it overall, I gotta say.
Yeah, I mean, outside of the fact that to me it just doesn't feel like a Tales from the Crypt episode, because it's not, I liked it. The issue is, it's not a Tales from the Crypt episode. It's just not. It's just not.
No, it's not.
I like it. I think it's a good episode, but it's just...
Three's a Crowd was not a Tales from the Crypt episode, and you and I will go to the mat about that one.
Sure, that's fair. I think the issue is, don't lead with this episode.
Oh yeah, certainly not. This should have come up mid-season.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe the bigger issue, is don't lead with this episode. Because that is where I have a real issue, is you're leading. You should never lead with this episode. If it isn't, I don't know, if it isn't what... I don't know. It's hard to explain because, again, like, I like it. It's just, you get it. I mean, it's just not... It's not Tales from the Crypt.
There's no sort of twist that kind of, like, clues us in or hooks us in as far as the irony portion of Tales from the Crypt goes.
Right.
There's no supernatural element other than the fact that this person might already be dead and this is their eternal fate, which I kind of get, but it's not that explicit.
And that seems to be where it's going.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of get the idea that this person is already dead and now they're in...
purgatory.
Yeah, not necessarily heaven, but the afterlife.
Sure. Yeah, I would agree with that.
The way they set it up is... that the Peter McNichol character, as soon as he realizes he's going to be absolved of having to be the public defender anymore and he's passed it off to somebody, his reaction is, well, I'm going to sit in this electric chair and die. Like, that's a more reasonable end for him.
Or he goes to heaven or hell is the way I looked at it.
Yeah, man, but at the same time, it's like they didn't make it explicit that he needed to find a replacement in order for that to happen. If that were the case, then I'd be down. But he just sort of says, okay, I won you a settlement here. You're going to be the public defender now, so now I'm going to go. And I'm just going to kill myself. And I don't know, it's kind of muddle-headed. Like, if you kill yourself in purgatory, do you get to go to heaven or hell or whichever? Like, it just needed to be more explicit as far as where we were going, and it wasn't. Having said that, you know, I often talk about how set-bound each of the episodes seem. Not the case here.
Oh, this is... really?
Yeah, no, man, I didn't get that at all. Like, clearly, it's a bottle episode. We're just stuck in this courthouse for the entire thing.
Right.
However, I think it was sort of skillfully made. I think Russell Mulcahy is a massive talent, doesn't get enough recognition. Talked about it on previous episodes. He did that Blythe Danner episode about the fucking serial killer, which was not great. But this one's a little bit better. I'll certainly put it up against that one.
Well, I would rather watch this than that one, but that goes without saying.
Yeah, and that might be because of Catherine O'Hara, I think.
Oh, yeah, she's great. I mean, Catherine O'Hara, she's amazing. I mean, come on, Beetlejuice?
SCTV, fucking... Mighty Wind.
Schitt's Creek?
Dude, anything she sort of puts... Yeah, there you go. Anything she puts her name to, she's going to be incredible. Catherine O'Hara is one of the most underrated, while at the same time rated by those in the know, actresses of all time. She's also incredibly beautiful. Let me just throw that out there.
She's also Canadian, eh?
Hey, man. A blue-eyed redhead. What are you going to do? She carries the episode. She actually made me give a shit about her character, which is rare. Right. Because I think if it were anyone lesser than her, if it had been just somebody that I kind of, not necessarily detested at the outright, but wasn't 100% on board with, then I would just kind of be waiting for her to get the comeuppance. But because they cast her, which was the smartest thing that they did in this episode, I was constantly worried about her. And that was kind of a masterful stroke.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, again, she's great. So if you cast actors in roles and you give those actors the room to breathe in that role, you tend to get good results.
Yeah.
However, when you cast actors in roles and you don't give them room to breathe, you get so many of the episodes we've talked about. The one that always springs to mind for me is Timothy Dalton's episode, The Werewolf Concerto. Like, I think that may end up being my least favorite episode of the show because you had Timothy Dalton and that's what you gave us.
It's kind of our constant refrain about every season of the show where we're given an actor that, even if they're not, like movie star caliber, which is a kind of an amorphous thing, but just somebody that you know is solid and is going to deliver good work, and then you don't give them anything to do. That's a huge motherfucking problem. In this case, I don't know that is the problem. I think Catherine O'Hara is giving us a shade of herself that we've never seen before, so that was very welcome. And as I said, as despicable as a character as she is, I was constantly hoping that she was going to get off. So maybe an unintended twist for this particular episode just based on casting alone.
Yeah, no, I think it's, again, my issues are the ones we've already talked about. It's not a Tales from the Crypt episode, and definitely don't lead with this.
No, if it had come, mid-season, I think I would have been a little more...
Even the second episode.
Yeah, man. I would have been even more forgiving if we had gotten this sort of mid-season, like as a nice palate cleanser for the ramp up to the end. Unfortunately, they led with this one, which is super weird.
Speaking of things they should never have led with, let's talk about the next episode, Only Skin Deep.
I see your rays, and I call. Bleed 'em and weep. Spades beat hearts every time. Oh, hello, creeps. So glad you could join me for my weekly game. My deal, hacks and chokers are wild. Are you in? Good. So's the man in tonight's Terror Tale, except his game is relationships. It's a ghoulish little gamble I call Only Skin Deep.
So Only Skin Deep also aired October 31st, 1994. It's directed by William Malone, written by Dick Beebe. It stars Peter Onorati and Sherry Rose. Peter Onorati plays a hot-tempered asshole who goes to a Halloween party and meets a beautifully masked woman who takes him back to her place. This episode sucks.
Oh, shit. Okay. I don't know about that.
I thought this episode was awful.
I don't think the ending is all that spectacular, but
I don't think any of it is very good. It feels
so...
It's so slow and plotting, and you know where it's going. And you know that this character is such a scuzzball that he has to get his comeuppance, and you know that she's going to be the one to dole out said comeuppance. At least it's not a love triangle, but it's another one of these 2-actor bottle episodes like Came the Dawn, where one character is hiding something or up to something, and right at the end you're going to see what that thing is. It's like beyond formulaic.
Is it as bad as Come the Dawn?
In terms of being offensive, no.
No. Not even remotely.
Right. Is it not good? Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and disagree with you. That's
fine.
Okay. Only Skin Deep is actually based on a story from Tales from the Crypt. Tales from the Crypt number 38, written by Bill Gaines and Al Feldstein. The artwork was done by the genius of Mr. Reed Crandall. It is effectively the same story. It's a little more to the point. There's a little less meandering as far as what's going on. There is a character who goes to a Halloween party, meets a girl who, in this case, she's dressed like a witch. He assumes she is wearing an old crone makeup on her face. They go back to her place. They fool around. And then come the next morning, he looks at her and thinks, why is she still wearing the mask? And he grabs hold of her face and pulls and pulls and pulls until he's basically ripped her face from her skull. And there's this great last frame of her that is just effectively a skull, and she's screaming, I wasn't wearing a mask. This is a story that I read as a kid. I do not remember, nor do I think I actually experienced the adaptation that we got here on Tales from the Crypt, the television series. That story always stuck with me. I was very excited when I figured out that that's what we were going to be watching. And I gotta say, for about 3/4 of it, I think it's on par with what I was expecting. It kind of goes in a bullshit direction at the very end.
Oh, the ending is complete bullshit. It is so predictably stupid, it feels like it's insulting the intelligence of the audience.
Yeah, but I mean, what we're talking about is honestly, the last couple of minutes of the episode. Because right up until the point, and I was a little bit miffed about this, honestly, where he goes and finds that she's been collecting these masks, which are the faces of other human beings, which I was totally on board with.
Which is also never explained.
No, it does. Yeah.
Not that they have to.
See, here's the problem.
Not that they have to, but I wanted to know, what is the deal with the character's face?
Why is anything happening?
Why does she look like that?
Honestly, Chris, I don't have a problem with that if maybe the lead character had been a little more charismatic. What we got is a dickhead who is thrown into this situation and meets a girl who's going to redeem him, even though he doesn't deserve it. And he goes back to her place. The sex in the episode is not that hot, honestly.
Wait, you were under the impression that she was going to redeem him? I was under the impression that she had brought him to her apartment for the sole purpose of killing him.
Well, that's what ultimately ends up happening, but I thought that because they had chosen to deviate and give this other backstory, that, screenwriting 101, you want a character to start in one place and end in another, and we don't get that. We have a character who starts out as a dickhead and ends up as a dickhead, except at a certain point, he's a little more curious in his dickheadedness. This is a careful what you wish for. I don't know, don't open the door, the sort of the Bluebeard myth, you're allowed to go everywhere except through that door, and then you go through the door, and then you end up killed.
Oh, it's totally Bluebeard, 100%. It's very much inspired by that.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with that. I think that's an exciting concept to explore. I just think that, had we made this character a little more acceptable as a human being, then it would have been more impactful at the end when she finally goes to town on him. And I guess that's why I said that I was hoping that character would be redeemed, because if you're going to set up a character who's a fucking dick in frame 1 of your episode, I'm hoping by a certain point he's going to have a change of heart and become a decent human being, and then it's too late. That to me is scarier and more ironic and more Tales from the Crypt than anything that they actually gave us.
And that's why I don't like the episode, is because there's no nuance to it. There's nothing to it. It feels totally on rails from the get-go.
It's a good mask, though, right? On her?
Yeah, but that's it. I mean, you know what it definitely feels like? It definitely feels like a set.
Oh, yeah, no question. Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna argue with that.
Big time.
Not a skillfully filmed episode.
And on top of everything else, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Realistically, put yourself in Peter Onorati's character's shoes.
Yes.
Would you go to where this woman lives if you saw what it looked like?
Honestly, yeah, I would have.
Oh. It's because of Sherry Rose's rockin' butt. No.
You know what? Not even counting her body, because her body type is actually not what I prefer as a man. But there was something sort of kind of off-putting and spooky about her sexuality that I really respond to. This is probably just me now.
No, I actually agree. I mean that there's a casualness to the sexuality along with the aloofness of her character.
Yeah, man. I mean, if you were to meet somebody in a no strings attached kind of a way, and she came off the way she did. The problem with the episode for me, ultimately, is not so much everything we've already talked about. It's the fact that they allow his character to come up with the concept of, let's have this moment where we're totally anonymous to the point where we're not going to take off our masks, right? That should have come from her. Because, just speaking as myself now, if I met a woman at a party and she was looked she looked like that, and she had that weirdo mask, and we kind of connected on an ironic, which is what happens in the episode. She's very, very sarcastic as a human being, which is what I respond to. If I had met that person, and then we went back to her place, and she said, here's the deal. I don't care who you are. I don't want to know your name. I don't even want to see your face. Let's just do what we're going to do, and that'll be the end of it. And then the character, I guess it's me now, because of the tale I'm spinning, like, goes out and tries to figure out more, like, then it's on me. The fact is, he brings it up, and then he breaks his own rule. And there's something sort of not settling as far as the drama of the situation goes. Look, man, you know what? If you go back and look, there is a story, time immemorial story. It's Japanese about, it was filmed in a movie called Kwaidan, which is a Japanese anthology horror movie, right? They eventually...
You say Qui-Gon?
Kwaidan. Kwaidan.
Oh, Qui-Gon. I thought you said Qui-Gon.
No, not Qui-Gon Jinn. We're not talking about Jedi here.
You beat me to it, you son of a bitch.
There's a Japanese myth about the Yuki-onna. Yuki-onna literally means snow woman, where a guy goes out into the wilderness and he's trying to get firewood to heat his home and save his family. He ends up running into this woman, this gorgeous woman who is ethereal, who takes him in, ends up having sex with him. And she says to him, I'm going to let you live. And I'm going to give you everything you need, but you should never tell anyone that this happened. And he agrees to that. And then eventually, like a year or two later, he actually just can't help himself, and he tells the story to someone, and she shows up and murders everybody. That got remade in the Tales from the Dark Side movie, right around, I'm going to say, 89, 90. In that case, it was called Lover's Vow with James Remar and Radon Chong, where there's an artist who meets this woman in the dead of night when one of his friends has gotten killed, and they have a spectacular night together, and she makes him make the same vow. So in this case, that vow comes not from her, but from him, and it feels really disingenuous.
No, and that's what we should have gotten.
Don't open that door. Don't transgress what you know to be the rules. That's the ultimate thing about EC Comics, and I know we've talked about this in the past, probably around season 1, but EC Comics were extremely moral. It's almost psychotic that they got caught up in the comic book code with Kefauver and his sort of railing against what was going on in America and the perversion of youth. If you read EC Comics, even if somebody is wronged and they're murdered, that person gets the opportunity to resurrect, make things right.
Right.
So when they stray from that formula, it feels really not acceptable. I mean, look, as a story, it works fine, I guess. What we got...
And one of those also makes his character more submissive than his character ends up being.
And that's something interesting to explore in American cinema circa 1993 or 4. You know what I mean? Because we weren't really dealing with that. There's no... Right. There's very little precedent for a sort of ultra alpha male character who has to subsume himself for a woman. And we kind of get it, but we don't. It doesn't really go all the way or the other. This is a miss in my mind, only because it would not commit one way or the other.
Yeah, well, and the other question that I have for the episode and the episode's logic is, if he doesn't go in the room, does he get murdered?
Yeah, because she had already poisoned him, right?
Right.
She already gave him the drink. So he was gonna end up as her trophy anyway. The fact that he goes and finds it, what you're saying, there's no consequence to it at all. It's not as if, it's just that he went home with her, which to me is just kind of a cautionary tale. Be careful out there. Don't fall in love or fall in lust with the wrong woman, because you're gonna end up as a fucking skin suit somewhere. That to me is fucking bullshit. I don't believe in that at all. I'm sure it happens.
Well, I was going to say, and also, I really think that if they had wanted to go full Tales from the Crypt, because again, this feels light, like Tales from the Crypt light again. I know it's based off an actual Tales from the Crypt story. They should have had her wear his face at the end.
Oh my God, why didn't they?
Or something. Like, why is she collecting faces? Like, again, you don't have to explain everything to me. I'm not one of those people. I'm not one of those film watchers or TV watchers who has to have everything explained to me. I appreciate a film that's left up to interpretation. I appreciate a film that doesn't force feed me everything. One of my favorite films is Videodrome, which pretty much does that the entire film. It doesn't force feed you anything. But you can't have nothing. You have to give little snippets of something. You can't just have a vacuum of that, and that's what this episode is. It is devoid of that to a maddening point.
It's funny, at the end of season 5, we talked about an episode called Come the Dawn, where they just kind of blamed the lead character's psychosis on the fact that he was a cross-dresser and couldn't reconcile himself with that, which 20, 30 years later seems even more egregious than it probably was at the time. But I gotta say, at least that was an ethos, because I was thinking the same thing. Why is she collecting these faces? It seems so infrequent. Like, you know, we're dealt with a character who effectively has deleted herself from humanity, right? I mean, we've got a character, the lead character, the Peter Honorati character, like goes through her purse and then goes through all the drawers in her house. He's trying to figure out who she is. And she has managed to scrub herself from society. What is she doing in the meantime?
What is she hiding?
Well, no, I mean, like, clearly she just likes to lure men in and then cut their faces off. I get that. That I would have accepted. But once I start thinking about it, I'm thinking, like, what is she doing for 9 months of the year? There's only, like, 4 faces already in that cabinet. She's clearly been, she had the face her entire life. That's her face. You know what I mean? Like, we're given nothing at all. Like, if even a line of dialogue where she says, you know, I started this a couple of years ago, and you're my 5th or 6th or whatever, like, would have gone a long way. Instead, we're just kind of given this amorphous, isn't this weird, isn't this frightening, couldn't this happen to you kind of moment in the episode. And it just feels, if you want this character to be doing what she's doing, give me something as to why she's doing it. And if you're not going to do that, at least let me know that she's constantly doing it and she's gotten away with it somehow. I don't know. It's really clumsy.
Yeah, I think that's a nice way of putting it. I mean, again, it's an episode where I expected more, and I understand and appreciate what they were going for, but you can't give us this little. You just can't.
No, man, and I was really on board for a lot of the episode. And, you know, usually when you have a character who's a dickhead from the get-go, I kind of tune out. But in this case, I was like, let's see where this goes. Let's see where this character gets to. And I liked the idea that he was so enchanted by her that something else was going on. I will also say the other thing I enjoyed about the episode, she finally kind of reveals that she's just there for his face. They're kind of rolling around and struggling on the floor, fighting over the bone saw. There's no other word for it. And it felt like he cut off a bunch of her fingers. That made me cringe so hard while I was watching it. And then as it turns out, he didn't. He just kind of cut her hand a little bit. It seemed like he cut off at least 2 or 3 of her fingers, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it did.
And I was just like, oh my God, like, even no matter what the end is here, like, there's some fucking consequence and we just got it. And then they were like, no, we're pulling that back. She didn't lose any fingers. She just got a cut on the top of her hand. Like, fuck you. Go for this or don't, man. You want to go sexual, go sexual. Like, make it the most hardcore. If you want to go for relationship-wise, go for that. If you want to go for this other weird kind of amorphous underbelly of society situation that's going on, go for that. But don't dick around on each of those levels. Like, go for it. We're going with you, right? You're going with them, right?
It's almost like this is a supernatural show that trades in horror and comedy. It just fails spectacularly on both sides.
You know, that's the ultimate thing about these, like, the sort of psychosexual episodes. I'm always waiting for it to get actually psychosexual. I want the episode to turn me on and then repulse me, because that's what they were going for, right? I mean, they couldn't commit to that. This could have been a great episode. To me, this is more of a failure than a lot of the ones that I feel like are insulting from the get-go, because this had the potential. While we're talking about it, Peter Honorati is great. Sherry Rose is great. All the actors are good. It's not like it ever failed dialogue-wise or any of the other situations. It just could not commit. And if you're not going to tell a story that commits, what are you even telling us a story for?
Exactly. Exactly. That's my ultimate question. What's the point then? Yeah, none point. None point taken. So on the next episode of Chronicles from the Crypt, we're going to be taking a look at episode 3 and 4 of season 6, Whirlpool and Operation Friendship. So until then, where can people find... Oh, God, we're not ready for the...
I'm totally ready. I can't wait to talk about these episodes.
Oh, God. Until then, where can people find you, Father Malone?
Go onto YouTube right now, everybody, and look up Odd5 Films. OUGHTFIVFILMS. One word. And then check out all of my videos. And if you enjoy the movies that I've reviewed and have seen them in the past, well, enjoy the video, because I'm telling you something you probably don't know. If you have seen the movie and some are taking umbrage with the fact that most of my show is called You've Never Seen, well, I invite you to have sex with yourself.
in the nicest way possible.
yeah, you know what? Like, I want you to enjoy the sex you're having with yourself, no question. But do that instead of contacting me to let me know that you have seen the movie that I've claimed you haven't seen before. Also, you can hear me over on Dreams for Sale, the Twilight Zone 85 podcast, where myself, Mr. Stashu here, and Mr. Mike White, we talk about the 1985 revival of The Twilight Zone. And about once a month, you can also hear me over on the Culture Cast, Chris's main show, if you will, where we talk about movies. That's where you can find me.
And as for me, you can find me on Twitter at Casualty_Chris. Like Father Malone said, those are some projects that I work on with him. I also do Scary Stories We Tell, which is a podcast about the intersection between true crime, paranormal, and horror culture. You can find this podcast on Twitter at ChroniclesFTC, chroniclesfromthecrypt.com. That's where you'll find the entire RSS feed. We are in season 6 of the show, but we've been doing this since season 1. Big thanks, as always, to John Kassir. He really is, one of the greats, one of the great voice actors, and we can't sing his praises enough and can't be thankful enough that he decided to do the intro for our podcast. And we'll catch you on the next episode.